Welcome to episode 5 of the Roark Mix. And this week we have Rach McBride with us. People in the triathlon Ironman world know Rach as the Purple Tiger. Got the mohawk going, always a flashy outfit, got the tats going. Rach is much more than what we see in the triathlon world. We'll find out in this conversation. There's so much going on. Cellist, traveling bands, loves the punk and ska scene, graduate degrees in genetics. She's an advocate for sexual health and advocacy, speaks on equity issues, non-binary issues, and that awareness. And I'm not going to say too much because this conversation is amazing. And it's all focused around music, but of course, enters into it, life enters into it. And I think a lot of the time, Chris and I, we just sat back and took it all in. So here we go. Welcome to Rach McBride and their story.
To it.
Okay, so let's start with the beginning because, Chris and I chatted. Him living in Toronto, I didn't know if he knew Tacoma, growing up, because I believe you grew up in Tacoma.
Yeah, for the first decade of my life, I was in Tacoma.
Okay, cool. And I know you're super tight with your parents. Did they have an influence on you in the household? Was there music going on, or like who was driving that force in the house? Who was responsible for the music program?
Yeah, I mean, I think my parents' influence was pretty huge because they were both musicians themselves. I mean, they had their careers, but my mom is an excellent piano player. And my dad actually got a scholarship when he was out of high school for a trumpet to university, which he didn't take. But so I've never heard my dad play trumpet, but my mom would put us to sleep with playing like Chopin at night. And classical music was playing all the time. They listened to it. They were really involved in the Tacoma concert scene there and with the symphony orchestra, and were like big supporters. And so it was a really big part of our life. And then of course, like there was like the odd sort of 60s stuff mixed in there, like the Moody Blues, and they listened to a lot of like new age music as well. And so that was really what I grew up listening to. And I remember my folks loved to tell the story about, I don't remember what the context was, but at some point maybe they turned on the radio and it was like rock music, like more contemporary music. And I would have been like somewhere around the age of 5 or 6. And I was like, Mom, can you just put on normal music, which was like classical.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah. I don't know if we'll ever hear this on the show again. This is great. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's actually illuminating for me too, because, I'm a dummy. And whenever I think of Tacoma, I think monster truck shows. But there was a scene there, hey, for classical music?
Yeah, so they have this beautiful Pantages Theater that while we were living there, I guess that would have been the early 80s, my folks were part of the community members who helped raise money to restore it. And it's absolutely gorgeous inside. And there's actually, I don't know if the bricks are still there, but they had all the donors would get bricks with their names on it. And my parents actually put my brother and I's names on the bricks. So whenever we would go to the Pantages, we would go and find our bricks with our names on it. So yeah, there's an incredible scene. Yeah. And like Chihuly, the glass artist, is there. Like there's an incredible art scene there. Yeah.
Right on. Wow. Chris, do you have anything about this period in Rachel's life?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't have an entire backstory into your youth, but I'm fascinated to know West Coast music is in the music scene. First of all, you were a teenager in Tacoma?
Or? No, I was 0 through 9, so quite young.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
I am fascinated about, if I may jump forward to your experience in Germany and the age at which you lived there, and if there was a little bit of a music scene that informed your love for both classical and for the type of music you like now, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I lived those 9 years in Tacoma, and then we sort of moved across the U.S. So like Cincinnati, Kansas, New Jersey, and then I finished my last year of high school in Berlin.
Oh,
And so in each, I would say that like things really started to shift for me when I moved to Kansas, and I kind of like got in with the wrong crowd, as it were, and started getting into like a lot of rock music and like metal and punk stuff and goth, and that was like the whole grunge phase. So that was like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and all of that jazz. And started getting into like more industrial and harder core stuff, and was introduced to like the Dead Kennedys and the Misfits and like a bunch of really awesome punk music. And so when I moved to Berlin, I was in this place of like my folks ended up having like their best friend, one of their best friends was the French hornist, one of the French hornists in the Berlin Philharmonic. So we would have like access to, we would be going backstage at the Berlin Philharmonic, and when we would go to see concerts there, and saw some incredible performances on that end. But then on the other side, I was spending my weekends like out all night, every single night, at punk shows, at ska shows. And this was like Berlin in 1996, 95, 96. And so it was at this period where there was like still this huge transition of like the East and the West Berlin coming together. And so the city was like literally, like some of it was in shambles, some of it was just like a massive construction site. There were like shows happening every single weekend. And I just like, I had like maybe one or two friends who would come with me sometimes, but I was like doing this alone, like traveling throughout the city, going to these shows. And it was a really, really interesting time because I was like, it was my third high school, and I wasn't like that great. I knew I was only going to be there for a year. And so I had trouble like really connecting with people because I knew I was only going to be there for a year. And so I was really kind of floundering and really feeling quite alienated from a lot of stuff, and felt really weird and like an outsider. And so I found this, like, I kind of found comfort in being able to like be badass and like be within, in the mosh pit with the skinheads, like all in there going to ska. Like I was, ska as well was really big for me. I was like obsessed with ska. And so that then like really, I really started focusing in on those kind of genres of music.
very cool. Wow. Now, I was a decade in front of you in terms of my German experience, but the two bands that stick out that I had a great time with on the hardcore scene were Slime, who are from Hamburg, very cool band, and the Die Mimes, who are from Bremen, and just tons of fun to be with. And the scene in '86 certainly was just happening, and they were leveraging everything from the American scene, the hardcore scene. It's funny that you mentioned Dead Kennedys, because Jello Biafra, not only great political statement, great unifier in terms of all things equal, and in gender politics, but also a huge influence in the hardcore German scene, if you get right down to it too, moving forward past mid '80s into the '90s. And I think that to this day, in 2021, you could put on Police Truck or something from the Dead Kennedys catalog, and everyone's going to lose it too in Germany. It's just so cool.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
That's so cool.
I had no idea, actually. That's really, really fascinating, because I think, the Dead Kennedys
and Black Flag. Black Flag and the Dead Kennedys informed the German scene probably more than anybody else at the time.
Yeah. I can totally see that. Those two bands were really influential for me. Like Henry Rollins and Jello Biafra really like kind of personified, that like just like going against the grain, but like in the face of like justice almost, and like what is right in the world. instead of, it was so influential for me learning from Jello Biafra about like corporate America and how toxic that was and what all was happening. And, that we didn't, that what was like really under the surface. And
Sure.
so it really then, informed me when I went into university. I got really into social justice movement and like got really sort of, what am I like an activist, doing a lot of picketing and occupying buildings and things like that. Really disrupting.
I'm kind of surprised that
disruptive.
I'm kind of surprised that you and Henry Rollins aren't friends.
Gosh, I wish. That's like a dream.
I think I wanted him to be my friend. I just don't think he wants to be my friend.
I don't think he wants to be anybody's friend.
Hey, you mentioned like 2 minutes ago talking about the scene was badass. You felt badass. Was being involved in the punk scene, the ska scene in Germany, did you transform? Did you become a new you while you were there? Because you said in Kansas City you're trying to kind of experimenting with crowds and kind of got into a bad crowd per se, but then you went to Germany and you went all in. Did you become a different person because of music?
Yeah, I really feel like, I mean, I think there were a lot of things there, but in between Kansas and Berlin was New Jersey, and in New Jersey is where I really got in touch with like my creative self. And that was where I showed up one day like totally in like grunge mode, or like the next day I would be totally in goth mode. And so I was really experimenting and just being super creative. And it was a reflection of everything that I was listening to. Like I was listening to the Grateful Dead. I was listening to, all of the grunge stuff. I was listening to like Bauhaus and all of this goth music. And so then, yeah, like moving, it's kind of like I found, and when I moved to Berlin, I found this like community that I really, really wanted to belong to. And some of it was just like this feeling of alienation and just like not fitting in. And looking back at it too, I'm realizing that aesthetic, like the punk and the goth aesthetic, is really, it's really creative for one, but it's almost genderless in a way. Like I could be this like female bodied person and I could have a mohawk and I could have giant boots and I could like be like tough and badass. And that was okay. That was like seen as cool. And so I felt like I had this place in there where I could sort of be this like genderless person in a way.
Yeah. Cool. Did you leave Germany kicking and screaming to go to Toronto, or, like, were you like, damn, this is my place, but I gotta go, but I don't want to go? Or how did that transition work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that like there was definitely like still even though I learned to speak quite a lot of German when I was there in that year, there was this discomfort of like, I don't really belong here. And like the city was awesome, but I still felt it was still a bit of a scary place to be. Even though I was like really enjoying going to these shows, I was still like, I was in a room full of skinheads, or I was like, getting a knife pulled on me in the subway. And that was a little scary. And so I didn't feel like I had like the safety aspect of things. And so I think I was excited to move to Canada because I had never lived in Canada as a Canadian. My parents were both Canadian, and we always like really loved Canada, but I had never actually lived there. And so I think I was excited about that. And I was excited about the, like in university, the like residence that I moved into was called Arts House. And it was like people who were studying all different types of things, but like everybody was an artist who was living there. And so it was this really cool mix of folks. So I think when I got there, I really felt like I was in with my people in a way that was like more comfortable, super creative. We could basically do whatever we wanted, and it was like loved and accepted.
Chris, you know the scene there better than I do because you're a Toronto guy. But Rach, did you go out to a lot of places? Or I'm kind of wondering, what was the letdown? Because it was so full on in Germany. Of course, you're in the arts house, you're a student, and you're with creative people and a lot of freedom. But you're like, damn, I wish I'd go to a rocking show. Could you feel that need?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely took advantage of being, because I was in Guelph, and so I really took advantage of being close to Toronto. I went to a lot of shows. I honestly, I don't remember the venue names anymore because it's been so long since I lived there. But you know, I definitely took advantage of that, and it was one of the things that I forced me to leave the city to go and start my first master's. Is I was so involved in the music scene in Toronto that I was like, if I go to U of T, you know, University of Toronto, and I do a degree there, I'm going to be so distracted by like this amazing life that I've created for myself in the music scene that I'm not going to be able to do this schoolwork. And so I need to be an adult and move to Ottawa where it's very boring. There's no music scene. So I can focus. And like,
there has been a good
do
music.
I regret that? Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's awesome. Being an adult meant you had to let go of some of the music. I'm wondering if any really mellow music came in there. Oh my God, because you had to like break free and focus.
You would have enjoyed. I mean, and I'm dating myself, but I think you would have really enjoyed the early '80s Toronto scene, especially if you're a fan of ska, with the Specials and the Selector and the Beat, and you know, these are bands who are constantly here because of the support that they received in the Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal corridor meant that they were cycling through quite a bit, and the scene became a constant and very, very cool. And the homegrown ska scene actually became quite a big deal in Toronto too. And to this day, I mean, it still has some roots, but I can see where you're going with that because it's just super enjoyable, joyous music, and the crowd. Especially the Toronto scene has been always so accepting of a great diversity of people. It's a very welcoming scene. I always found it to be that way. Being a part of it and playing in bands here as well. It's always been a cool scene. So I could see your draw. And I have to compliment you for actually leaving it because not many people do. It's a giant vortex suckage that people get brought into. So hats off to your strength to say, I need to be an adult, because I've never really managed that. So
yeah, I mean, it's totally true. You know, when I moved to Toronto, it was like I came from what I felt was this like ska, like so much going on in Berlin, to like Toronto. It was really hard to find, you know, shows like ska shows that were happening or that were interesting to me. And so it did feel like a little bit of a void that I filled with other stuff, you know, just sure. Like the scene is incredible. Like there was so much interesting music happening at the time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, so where did the band come in? You traveled with the band throughout the States. Was that pre-masters? Did you just drop out at one point? Like, how did it work? And what were you doing in the band? Like, I need to know about this band.
Yeah. So, so when I left, I grew up classically trained in cello. So until I left high school, it was all classical. I didn't know anything else. You know, I remember a teacher at one point wanting me to like improv something, and I was like stumped. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so when I came to Guelph, then I got in with people who were just like, let's just jam. And I started to learn how to like improv on the cello. I taught myself how to do more improv stuff. And so then that got me into like playing in some local bands. The first thing I recorded was with an artist named Barzin H, who is still making movie soundtracks and stuff. He's a really incredible person. And then got involved. I composed the improv score for like a one-person show in Guelph that we performed at the university. I started working with some improv dancers actually dancing with my cello a little bit. And in Guelph as well, we made up this shock rock band that we called BMX. That was hilarious. We all had characters and we played a lot of weird covers and made up our own weird songs, and just like had a really wacky time. It never went anywhere outside of Guelph, but it was really, really fun while it lasted. And so then when I moved to Toronto after I finished my degree, I don't remember how it happened. I just got connected somehow with a band called Picastro, and they were looking for a cello. And I showed up. You know, this is like this like slowcore kind of rock band at the time, and they're like pretty, you know, down to earth kind of folks. And I show up like with these like these crazy colored dreads and this like giant ring in my nose. And I remember the drummer, Evan Clark, afterwards, he was like, when I first saw you, he was like, I don't know if Rach is going to fit in with us, but it totally worked. And I played with the band for a couple of years. And so we would we would randomly have, you know, we played a lot in Toronto and surrounding area. We would go down to the US a lot. And I guess the biggest thing we did was a 3-week tour, driving down the East Coast, along the West Coast, along the southern states, and then up the West Coast. 17 shows in 18 days in a minivan, and it was far from glamorous. It was slightly traumatic, but amazing as well. Each of us had like our breakdowns at some point I broke down in New York City, you know, somebody else broke down in Texas. Like, yeah, it was nuts, but in retrospect, it was really fun. So yeah, the band is like, it's still happening too. It's really, Liz Hyson is the woman who has fronted the band for the past like decades, I guess it is now. And she's still making music. I'm on I recorded one of the albums, called Metal Cares. And I think it's not music that I like listen to all the time, but I really enjoyed being in the band and playing for sure.
So the band, your band relationship survived though. Like, that's amazing. 3 weeks in a van, everyone breaking down at separate times, and you're still to this day friends, which is wow.
Barely, yeah. We barely survived. I had the cool opportunity, you know. I think when I first moved here, gosh, that was already like almost 15 years ago. A couple of years in, Liz came to the to Vancouver to play a show and was like, "Hey, Rach, it's just me coming out. Do you want to play cello?" And we played at Pat's Pub, I think, and it was awesome. Opened up for Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah.
Oh wow,
oh, that's so awesome!
Great band.
Yeah, totally.
I'd like to know the difference between, from my firsthand experience, I'd like to know the difference technically between a meltdown in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, my experience, which I think would be way worse than a meltdown in New York City. I think there's some resources and some fun and some other cool things to check out instead of the parking lot of a Harvey's, which is where I met my Waterloo there. So I think to have chosen New York City, I think is awesome. You're gonna blow out in New York City.
Hey,
yeah, totally.
Chris, I want to flip to you because we were talking about your Venn diagram question, and this leads into that whole philosophical and physical thing that we were talking about before.
Right. So I need to fast forward to almost to your current life, and I'm interested in knowing, in terms of a Venn diagram, how training, competing, and relaxing meet in a musical sense. In that, I'd like to know if there's specific training music, if there is competing music, and because I don't know, if you saw me, you'd know that I don't compete in your sport. But I'm interested to know that the genre of music that you choose for your training cycle, the music that perhaps you choose to get ready for your competing cycle, and what you use to gear down, say after a competition? And I'd like to know if there's any intersection of the musical styles and genres, or if there's one particular piece of music in any style that you use as motivation or inspiration for your day to day.
Yeah, so I love this question because there is this massive intersection. When I started to think about this, if I think about what I wind down to, it's usually some like pretty chill classical or classical based music. For the past couple of years, I've been absolutely obsessed with Nils Fromm, who is, I think he's a pianist by training and does a lot of like sort of electronic and experimental things. Or Einaudi is another, I think Luciano Einaudi, an Italian artist, more piano based. And it's kind of like in this Steve Reich, like Philip Glass, Arvo Pärt kind of realm, those sorts of things of like classical composers. And so that's like gearing down. But then I've talked a little bit about how I use music in competition and training. And for example, like when I am on the swim, I have Mozart's Requiem, like this little chunk of Mozart's Requiem that's like playing over and over and over in my head. And it's basically, I use it for pacing and timing, but it also keeps me like focused and in the moment, being in the water there. And what I have recognized, what I use sometimes, especially outside, and I remember a particular moment when I realized I was doing this was on this like super long gravel ride. I was out in the middle of nowhere, and it was just like relentless hills, like up and down and up and down. And I realized I was like singing cello concertos in my head, and I was so focused on those that I was just like zoned in on like the effort level and just like able to really push really hard. And it was just like a fascinating moment of like, wow, I was like, I can leverage this. Like I can use this in racing if I tap into these, because for me, especially the cello, obviously, like I've been playing it for almost 40 years now, like 35 years. And it's such a huge part of me, and this music speaks to me so much, and the passion in there, that I just get swallowed up by it, and I feel it, in my body, and I'm able to like channel that into that focus, especially on the bike. I'm still working on what to do on the run, because that's another beast. But at least I know I can use that on the bike. But that's then super different than like this. I have a playlist, because I'm pretty lazy right now with my music. I have a playlist that I listen to when I'm training, and it's like, no matter what I'm doing, it's always the same playlist. And I just kind of like add songs to it every now and then. And it's just like is all over the place. And most of it is like a lot of cheesy house music. I've got some Britney Spears in there. I've got Tame Impala in there. I've got, what else do I have? Like Deadmau5, Caribou, another awesome Canadian band, 9 Inch Nails, Lizzo, John Spencer Blues Explosion. Like, it's kind of wacky, but they're all songs that like speak to me, and it really encompasses this, like, this is me. Like, I have this like massive, like, just like when I was a teenager and like showing up one day as a goth and one day as a punk and one day as a grunge, like and like in my Grateful Dead t-shirt, like it's still the same. I'm still like all over the place and just really feeling like I embody all these different genres of music.
I'm curious about that discovery of, you just kicking into cello things. Like, I don't speak cello language, but but that just kind of came accidentally, and then you tapped into it. Like that kind of just came, from what I understand, right?
Yeah. So it had been, it was inspired. I had, I think that the night before that ride, I had been really randomly just, I felt inspired to watch. So one of my cello idols is Jacqueline Dupre, and she was known for being like incredibly expressive with her cello, and almost to, you know, people really criticized her for that because she was this like woman who was like really bringing all of this emotion into her music. And I put on a video from her, like I think it was from the 60s or 70s, of her playing her famous Elgar cello concerto. And it was really inspiring to me. And so I think I had that kind of stuck in my head,
Mm-hmm.
which then like translated into what I tapped into the next day.
Now, shockingly, I did a bit of research, and you said in one of your Ironmans that you actually were singing songs, or you had songs. Were you referencing more of the cello, or did you actually have some songs going through your head and some words and that type of a thing? Like, did that program change?
That's my Mozart's Requiem. So that's when,
Mm-hmm.
especially during the swim, when I you know, that's how I know I'm like on pace. And what I realize in retrospect as well is like keeping me calm in the water, because it can get so chaotic in there. You feel like you're drowning, you know, those sorts of things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think that kicks in until the first 200 or 300 meters, right? Like it better be 9-inch nails for the first 300 meters, because it's all elbows.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that reminds me though, absolutely. At Ironman Canada, I had been listening to a 9-inch nails song. And the chorus, I think, was like, I won't let you fall apart. And that really spoke to me. You know, my family was there watching that race. I had this amazing like hometown crowd, and that especially on the run, was really inspiring for me. Of like, I kept singing that over and over in my head, because it really reminded me of like who all was there and who all was supporting me. And it felt like I had, you know, through the music, was able to tap into that external motivation to keep moving forward when you're just like, you know, in the throes of the last 10K of the marathon environment.
And you know, and I referenced this when I spoke to you, or we texted briefly about that transcendental state, that state where you go to the limit. Does music still play there when that last 10K and it's almost out of your body, right? Is there music still there, or what's happening? Or is it just a fog? Is it a focus fog? I'm curious, does this music keep going, or is it like, does that go? Or is it more important than during the crazy time where you're just all out and out of your body almost?
I mean, I think that in the last, like, you know, 5K of a race, especially Ironman, it's really, I'm barely thinking of anything. I'm doing a lot more visualization than like hearing things. So I'm visualizing like just getting to the next telephone pole, or I visualize like a rubber band tied around me to the finish line that's like pulling me there. And so I find that at that point, I'm not really like in the listening mode. I'm more trying to visualize. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, we went deep through all this.
And I had to leave for a second. I had an out of body experience. I had to check out.
You know, Chris, I'm going to go to like some faster questions, because I don't want to take up too much more of Rachel's time.
Hit it.
We're good. Okay. All right. So, where are we? Oh, I know. Most memorable concerts, probably Germany, you know, or maybe not. Like that first, was there a breakthrough concert?
Yeah, for sure. So, in Germany, I saw a lot of concerts at a venue called SO36 or SO36, which is in Kreuzberg, which is like, it's now more of like a queer venue, but at the time it hosted a lot of the punk shows, that I went and saw. And first of all, I saw the Misfits there. So it's like this tiny venue, right? It's like a couple hundred people. And I saw the freaking Misfits there, which was just like, oh my God. mind blowing. Like I'm like touching them, you know, there's no like barriers and like guards or anything. It's like we are there like at the stage with them. But because I had gone to all of these shows and like had this vibe that was like pretty violent and like a little bit scary, that in I would have been like the spring of '96, Bikini Kill, a Riot Girl band, came and played, and it was like an all women's show, so it was just like women identified people who were there, and the vibe was just like so different, and so it was just like it felt like so safe, and it completely changed my perspective on like, oh, like this is what it feels like to feel like safe in these spaces versus like all of these other shows that I've been to. And that was like a really big eye opener for me, for sure, in terms of like just like gender violence and things like that. And like Bikini Kill is still one of my favorite bands of all time. Like I couldn't, you know, looking back now, I'm like, I was really into Riot Girl in like early and mid 90s, all throughout the 90s. And looking back now and realizing like, oh, I was like part of this scene. Like this is when it happened. Like I was a part of something really cool that happened. And because I feel like everything else I just kind of missed the boat on. Yeah. So Bikini Kill in Berlin, 1996 at SO36.
I think you raise a very interesting point, and one thing that is probably the most misunderstood thing about the punk or the hardcore scene was that to an outsider it's terrifying. To somebody who's part of the scene, it's a completely welcoming space. It's always been a safe space, certainly in my experience, for anybody. And for sort of a kid like me who was weird and different, the way that I embraced the scene had more to do with the way that the scene embraced everybody. It was a collective vibe, and people always thought that it was a bunch of a lot of violence. And in all of these years, and I'm 57, I witnessed so little violence, but I witnessed so much acceptance in the hardcore scene that it's a great misnomer in the music industry, because it was a very cool scene, very open-minded, which you didn't get in the glam rock or cock rock scene of rock and roll. It's a really interesting study. I think it should be a PhD, because I'm not smart enough to do it. Obviously,
because you have so much time in your hands, Rach. All yours.
Yeah, totally.
Put that in.
Now, I must say, I asked this next question to pretty much everyone, because we're in the throes of COVID, a year plus in. What's the next show? Like, you know, I remember, you know, and Chris goes to lots of shows, a ton of shows. And living in Toronto, it's a little bit easier, but he goes to shows like once a week, once every 2 weeks when life was normal, I reckon, Chris.
Oh, 2 a week.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's still in the scene. But I remember, and I have a busy life, but I'm like, maybe I'll see that band later. And now we're of the mindset, damn it, the first thing I can see, I'm not even being choosy, you know, but if you could be choosy, or you don't have to be, who do you want to see? Like, you're like, okay, we can go to a show. Damn it, I will go to the show.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This is really funny. I think it would have been in like September, or no, maybe it was in the middle of the summer, like June or July. Bikini Kill was revived and went on tour. And I was like, immediately, I was like, yes, I am seeing this band no matter what. And they're only playing Victoria, and it was like one night. And so I immediately bought tickets. And of course, then COVID hit, and then it was postponed to like the fall. And I'm like, yep, I'm still going, like fall, no problem. Then it was postponed to 2021. And I'm like, I didn't even look at the date, like when they would postpone it and be like, oh, do you still want the tickets kind of thing? I'm just like, yep, still there. Yep, 2021. Now it's postponed to 2022. And I'm just like, yep, still there. I don't care when it is. Like, I'm going to be there. Victoria Bikini Kill. Whenever it happens, I don't care what, I'm going to be there. You can't take those tickets away from me.
To be a fly in the wall, I'm not sure if you have a coach or yourself coach, but if you had a coach just like, okay, here's the race, you're like, oh, sorry, I've committed to Bikini Kill 3 years ago. I'm not going to this race.
Right. But I mean, this is the thing. It's like, you know, as an athlete, that when I first became an athlete, giving up going to shows was so tragic for me. I had to just stop looking at the listings, you know, to stop seeing all of these incredible bands that I was missing, because it's just not feasible, right? Like, as an athlete, it's all about energy management. I can't be out late at night because I've got big training days the next day. And so it's definitely this like huge part of my life that has just like for the past 15 years has been like gone, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like very, very rare that I get to go and see a show. I think one of the more memorable in the past 10 years, I saw Amanda Palmer in in Vancouver, and that was amazing. But yeah, and so I'll see, you know, some of those key players that'll come by. Sleater Kinney came as well, and I saw them last 2 years ago or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to get another chance at Bikini Kill because they're a Washington-based band.
They're from Olympia.
They're from Olympia, Washington. Yeah. So they got to be close. They got to come up and see you.
Yeah. Totally.
They owe you.
Yeah.
No.
Really? Right.
No, Rach, I bet you my partner Chris is sick of this question, but I love this question. I ask this all the time. Is I'm going for, what is that song that stopped you in your tracks? And Chris has explained it before of like, what's the song that almost touches upon every sense that you have? And I relate it to a girl that works for me in downtown, and she lived in South Africa during apartheid, and they had such a strong connection to Sixto Rodriguez that now whenever I have a Sixto Rodriguez song on one of the playlists, I actually see her. If I'm in the room and I see that song come on, I love it because she actually stops. Like, I could see it actually hits her body deep, and I could see her hesitate and it almost change. And is there a song, a go-to song for you that will always just get right to your core?
Well, there's really like, there's an artist called Smog, which is pretty obscure. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of them. It's headed by Bill Callahan. And when I was living in Toronto and doing my music thing, it was a really big, like, his music was really influential for me. And it was like, it was so simple and it was so poetic. And I actually have one of my tattoos is like represents one of his songs and a verse in one of his songs. And I remember sitting in the green room in Toronto once on my own. I think I had probably just like ended a big relationship or something. And of course, this like music was super obscure. And I'm sitting there in the green room and all of it, like having a snack or a coffee or something. All of a sudden, Smog comes on, and I'm just like in this wonderful place of like comfort and just like, oh, these are like my people. I love this. And so now, if that ever happens again, which I have no idea if I think one time it did, somewhere here in Vancouver, all of a sudden Smog started playing. I was just like, oh my goodness. But that for sure, like anytime I hear any of his music, it will stop me in my tracks. And like concert, you know, I could sit for hours and hours and hours and watch that man play.
Yeah. Which leads me to then, from the green room, you go onto a show and, or you go onto a panel, or you're speaking, or you're on someone's show. And, I always laugh when you go to a baseball game and they're walking from the dugout to home plate and the DJ plays that song that like is them, and they've chose that song and it says so much about them. When you walk out on the stage, if there's a DJ playing, like, is there a genre? Is there a song? Is there, you're like, oh, anything from this band that's gonna make the crowd get ready for Rach?
I feel like just because of my nickname, Purple Tiger, the Eye of the Tiger song seems to be the go-to for everything. When I crossed the finish line at Challenge Rock, they played Eye of the Tiger 2 years ago, which was pretty awesome. So I feel like that is like what
Yeah.
everybody's go-to is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good fighting song, you know?
I guess it's better than anything by Glass Tiger. So let's, we'll roll with that. You know what? I don't want to take up too much of your time. Chris, do you have any gem you've been sitting on?
I'm not sitting on any gems, but I'm just going to throw this one out because I always find it it's telling, and I love your musical vocabulary is so complete. You covered so much ground, but I need to know if there's an artist or a song that you used to absolutely love that makes you cringe today. Absolutely, something that you just can't believe that you liked. Is there anything? I mean, you have. I mean, your musical spectrum is so complete. This may not apply.
I'm almost guessing. Was there a 3-day period in Jersey where you went off the rails? You know.
No, I'd say probably the like embarrassing side of things would be from like my childhood. You know, I was a big Milli Vanilli fan. If we want to go there. And I think my first concert that I ever went to when I was 9 years old was Richard Marx.
Okay.
So
good hair.
I might,
I think if it was to be cringeworthy, it would have to be 18 plus. I don't think you can ever reference anything from your childhood. That's unfair.
Oh,
yeah. So you're solid. No, you're solid. Absolutely solid. But I thank you for the confession.
Hey, and you know this question is coming, and Chris, I got to tell you, we have our work cut out for us. The goal of this show is to make a Rach McBride mixtape, and you get to tell us the genre. That this is going to be a wild experience. This is going to take me weeks, so I can't wait. What kind of a mixtape are we making for you?
I know. I was like, oh, this is, well, first of all, it's like, what the heck am I going to choose? You know, what do I want to have in there? Because if you were to make a mixtape that like encapsulates all of my musical favorites, then it's going to be like just completely wild and wacky and probably barely listenable. But I think that one of where I'm coming from and my answer to this is that I think there's some really, really awesome music that maybe a lot of people haven't heard before, but that was like so influential to me, especially when I was in my 20s. And that would be sort of the lo-fi and like noise kind of music from I would say like around the 90s area. So, yeah. And even moving into, I don't even know what it's called, but stuff like Broken Social Scene and like Godspeed You Black Emperor, like that kind of genre. So I'm thinking like lo-fi.
Okay.
Like
all right.
90s, 80s, 90s lo-fi.
Maybe some Pixies.
Oh yeah, Pixies. Totally.
Oh God, I know.
I used to think that band was the greatest band in the world.
This is my best day ever.
Oh, Rach, you have no idea. Like as soon as you started talking, yeah, I'm like, this is Chris's show now. I'm amazed that I got to talk because you two could be in a bomb shelter together and just talk, and you wouldn't know the world ended. Oh my God.
I guarantee you will not know one of my picks.
Well, my friend, this has been a treat. This has been a real journey. It's been a trip, and I'm super psyched to see what we can do for you because this has been something else. Thank you for your time.
Oh, I am so excited. I am so excited what you guys come up with. And I am just so jazzed, right, for having this conversation. It's really brought me back to like one of my super happy places. And I really, really appreciate it.
Oh my God. Well, we appreciate you. This is amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Great to meet you, Rach.
All
You
right.
too,
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we have our work cut out for us because Rach, they have a big library of music, a big reference. And Rach told us that lo-fi, kind of 80s, 90s is the mixtape that they want. And so we did our best. This is Chris's wheelhouse. So I think he had a lot of fun with this. I hung on. And so we're going to hear a lot of Chris talking about these bands that he knows very well in this life. And hopefully we do Rach justice by this mixtape that we put together for them. So here we go. Our presentation of the Rach McBride mixtape. I wanted to bring up when we ended the conversation with Rach, you asked a question, and then I asked you why you asked that right after we said goodbye to Rach, and it was just the two of us talking. And I said, why did you ask that question about, do you like Pixies?
Yeah. Well, you know, I was getting a sense of where she was going musically, and for me, from being a fan, the Pixies represent a great musical divide, and that's sort of that's the difference between art noise, you know, experimental art, and the Pixies, I guess, and you know, at the time, Butthole Surfers and Sonic Youth with Thurston Moore and Kim Gordon, they represented a path that took several different directions, and I wanted to know from Rach what if Pixies were in her wheelhouse, because that confirmed for me and really provided for me a touchstone to move forward with some of the picks, because I knew what camp she was in. But having said that, the noise, art noise movement, and some of the other cool bands I liked are all faithfully represented in here, because because Rach they because they were so so open with the musical choices, that you know, Rach gave me lots of ammunition to come up with a few beauties for that.
And you actually picked a Pixie song, did you not?
Oh, I did. I did, but not only that, but I dabbled in some of the areas where that river diverged. I included Sonic Youth and Butthole Surfers as well, because they all need to be faithfully represented in Rach's mix.
And as you know, this is not my wheelhouse. So
I know this is not your wheelhouse, but this is why we're doing this.
Oh, I know. And I love the research for this, and I was happily surprised that I did recognize more bands than I thought I was going to, and recognize more songs. But I love it because when you told them right at the end, maybe it was after you asked the Pixies question, but you said to Rach that you said, you might not recognize any of my picks. And when you sent your picks my way, I'm like, yep, I sure don't. There was a few I did for sure.
Oh, there'll be a few. There'll be a few,
yeah.
because if I come off with, you know, the obscurities that still appeal to me, they don't work well with a mix, because there still has to be a bit of a reference to it. I mean, you know, there's a few Roots songs in the mix, but they're there for specific reason, because they are the beginnings of the movement that they seem so intrigued in as a young person.
Yeah. Hey, so Rach mentioned Smog, Bill Callahan.
Yes. Yep.
He goes by Smog when he plays, and I was a little obsessed with it, so I went deep on Smog and his music. But here's my thing: is that I'm not gonna try and fake the fact that I know these bands or this music that well. But what I was trying to do, because Rach said that they have a tattoo of Bill's lyrics, of Smog lyrics somewhere on their body. And I went through a lot of lyrics. I'm like, which one is it? And Bill has a lot of songs.
There's a large catalog there.
So I ended up on Chosen One, which I'm not sure if it's a popular song of his or not, but there's a lyric in here. When you're a wild horse on a collision course with the sun. And I thought, is that the lyric that's possibly on Rach's body? I don't know, because she is a wild horse.
Yeah.
Rach has so much power and is so driven. And collision course with the sun, who knows? But Rach is on a course and on a path. And as they say about themselves, Rach says, I'm a badass. And that's the persona she puts out there, or they put out there when competing and in life, of the issues that they champion and being a high level athlete. And I just thought, maybe that's the lyric. Probably not, but I just stuck with that. So there's no other reason for picking this song by Smog. I don't know the guy. I really like this lyric.
But isn't it fun to speculate which lyrics would be chosen to have a permanent state on their body? Don't you think?
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'd almost not want to know.
I don't think we're gonna know. But I tell you, when the pools reopen, Rach spends a lot of time at the pool, and I hope she doesn't see me going, oh, nothing, just passing through, Rach. So, okay, I've started off pretty creepy. What's your song?
Well, it's a song about empowerment. It's a song about feeling victimized but coming out the other end. It's from the almighty Henry Rollins, with Rollins Band, actually, Low Self Opinion. It's funny because it's a song that I have actually used as a learning bit, and it was mostly in the context of how I felt about it. But I spoke about it a lot with my son, actually, as a teenager, and all the things that can go off the rails as a teenager, and I love everything about it. I like its power, I like its honesty, I like the narrative, and of course, being a Rollins fan, not only of his music, but also who did that?
You're good.
Are you hearing that?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's weird. No, so anyway, Rollins spoken word and Black Flag and Rollins Band music just represents everything that is powerful, taking no prisoners, taking no shit, and Rach represented all of those things to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rach is probably a complicated person, but at the same time, it's pretty obvious that they are very driven.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's many layers to Rach, but you will never say lazy or not driven or not too sure what the goal is.
Exactly. And I'm getting a sense that Rach represented for me about 100 things that I aspire to, but I know deep down I just don't have the fortitude, self-discipline, or gumption to do. So I just love to know that there's people like that.
Absolutely. But I think that we learned
cool.
about 2/3 or near the end of the show where Rach said, hey man, I can't even look at the shows coming into town because I can't tempt
Yeah.
myself because I got to go to bed.
Right.
You know, you're going to shows, Chris.
Yeah. I'm going to shows. You know.
Hey, I don't, you know, when Rach said lo-fi, 80s,
Hmm.
90s lo-fi, I couldn't stick to it. You know, I tried, but Rach did say broken social scene. So
Yeah.
I'm like,
Good.
permission. They're well after that, but
Hmm.
I love Emily Haynes' voice.
Sure.
Um, I really do. Um, and so I chose protest song, and and it's not like I'm going to explain a lot about the music, but I just, when I think of Rach and I think of protest song, and I just think of, you know, finding themselves and Berlin and being active and getting on that social activism kick and finding a voice. And like the song says, uh, no one needs another protest song, but at the same time, you do need protests. And there's a great line that I pulled out of it. It is whatever it is, and you are wherever you are. And, you know, once again, like we're just gonna trumpet this about Rach all night long, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
Rach is who she is. Rach is who they are. And,
Exactly.
and they are where they are. And, man, Rach is at a pretty cool place of just charging. So I don't know. I don't know if the song is entirely about that, but I just pulled bits and pieces out of it and said, man, I can see this song working for Rach.
Oh, absolutely. And further to Rachel's music vocabulary and and experience, you know, moving as a young person, moving to Germany at that time too, would have been you know, interesting and maybe lonely, and the fact that Rach pursued music as a way to try to fit in a culture that she wasn't born into, um, was interesting in that there was such a cool music scene. There always is generally a cool music scene. And if you want to go back to, um, you know, the Beatles experience and how much, American music and British music, informs the German experience. Uh, when we were talking about this, and I'll get right back to this song, because I did go with Pixies, Monkey Gone to Heaven, and uh, because I did sort of throw that one out, as a flare to see, where they stood on Pixies. But it's a song to me that represents everything about that era, that time that Rach mentioned, and it's just I think it's a damn cool song. I mean, you know, Pixie's part of that cool Boston scene, and Kim Deal, who went on, of course, with the Breeders. Just a great music lineage, and I could see Rach getting just right into that noise. It is an absolutely unholy racket, and I love it, and I think it's cool that she loves it. They love it too.
You mentioned your experience because you were in Germany more
Yeah.
1985, 86.
Mm-hmm.
Rach was there more 95, I think.
Yeah, so a full decade after I was. So the musical experience would have been completely different.
Yeah, because you said that yours had a more right wing edge
Yeah.
to the scene, right?
It was a frightening movement, you know, at the time, and it was distinctly right wing. It was distinctly, there was a lot of racial undertones to it, you know, a reaction to the economic situation, certainly. And I know that when the wall came down shortly thereafter, a lot of things changed, culturally, but you know, that type of thing is always born out of economic discontent and a lot of other issues. But yeah, I mean, what a difference 10 years makes. I think we had similar experiences musically there. I wasn't a teenager. I was in my 20s, but wow, what a description that Rach gave us. I mean,
Hmm.
it was a damn cool story. Unique. I thought it was unique and authentic, and you know, a young person who's looking for something and finds it in music, and they found it in the ska, in a pocket of music, a subgenre of a scene there, Rach painted a beautiful picture of how they handled it. Damn cool.
I know, and I love the fact that Rach said that they did the math pretty quickly. I'm here for 1 year. I'm not
Yeah.
making tons of friends. I may as well give her, get out there, like, and it's, you can wallow in the fact that, oh my God, my parents just moved me here and I know I'm here for a year. Like, I mean, what a shit, uh, uh, type of situation I got put into, or you can make a meal of it,
Yeah.
you know? So
And I think that speaks to a whole lot of who Rach is today. That chance taker, that drive, that singular momentum to achieve something that isn't considered every day. I mean,
yeah,
honestly, I mean, who else at that age, had they been trundled off to Europe with a family, would be on a subway, and Rach mentioned getting held up at knife point, and all of those kind of subway experiences. Um, it just blows my mind that someone would be so self-aware at that point in their life, because that's
yeah,
mostly when young people of that age are surly and hide in their bedroom and don't want to talk to anybody.
absolutely.
Fucking amazing.
I know. Hey, Rach mentioned that she played in a band in Toronto. They toured through the States, 3-month tour or something like that. And then later, the woman who kind of formed the band was coming out to Vancouver as a solo gig, and she asked Rach if Rach would accompany her, and they played Pat's Pub, and they were opening for Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah. So I had to throw on a Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah song,
Abs-
and on the
Absolutely.
tidal wave of young blood, and you know, I'm not going to get too deep into the song because I just like the sound of the song. And I must say that you can tell by my selections that of all the songs that I could have picked out of their catalog, I picked kind of a happier, free flowing song, and that's just my nature. So apologies.
No, I think you should congratulate yourself, because uh, a mix has to ebb and flow for it to work, and I think anything that could offset a little Rollins might be not such a bad idea. You listen to Rollins, you just feel like you're joyful, but you just feel like somebody just kicked the shit out of you, and
Well,
you're and you wonder why it feels good. It's so fucked up. I
so did you just grant me permission to throw in a Mariah song?
Well, I think no. Let's not go that far. But you can. I mean, I rolled with Rach's ska reference, and I went right back, because I need to go back before I can move forward. And I picked "Enjoy Yourself" by Prince Buster. He's a ska pioneer, and had a major influence on British ska. I mean, and as it moved forward, the song "Enjoy Yourself," of course, has been covered by tons of people, tons of bands. The Specials probably most famously, but the legacy of Prince Buster is critical in how the music evolved in Britain, and of course the British ska scene influenced anything that was happening in Germany. So Rach would have been collectively seeing bands that just picked up on the vibe out of Britain, just that close. So for that reason, yeah, I went with "Enjoy Yourself." Just a great song by the Specials, but the original, of course, is fantastic too. Just a beauty. It's a beauty.
Well, and here I am. I'm such a poser because when Rach talks about being in races and training, I like to say I relate because I do train and I've been in some races. Nothing like her level, not even close, but it hurt probably just as much just because of my lack of fitness. But
Your lack of fitness. Give me a fucking break. Your
relative to
lack of
Rach.
fitness. Oh, compare. Yeah, well, sure, but maybe not. That's
Flamey
That's
lips,
crazy talk.
Flamey lips, waiting for a Superman. And what I love
Mm.
about this one is, which I love the song and I love the lyrics. Is it getting heavy? Hell, I thought it was already as heavy as it can be. And I remember being stupid and asking Rach, I'm like, okay, near the end of the race, what song's going through your head? And Rach is like, well, you're a moron because I'm dying and I'm not singing anymore. And we're just trying to get to the next telephone pole. And
But I'd want to know that too. I mean, how could I possibly have a point of reference for that? I'm struggling to get to the next telephone pole in my after dinner walk.
so I thought maybe Rach would say, because I did read about the Trent Reznor thing, and Rach did say that, at that one Ironman Canada that got her at the start of the run. But I tell you, that lyric just rings so true because you thought it was heavy, and with the 10K to go in
Yeah.
the race, and you can smell the finish line, and you might have a podium, and Rach is in that class where she's generally in podium range, if not, winning a race, and you're running in fear. I'm putting words in Rach's mouth, but someone's behind you, and you're dying.
Right.
But it's heavier, even though you knew it was heavy. It's heavier than you thought. Always.
I couldn't imagine being in that situation, thinking that if somebody behind me has a half an ounce more juice than I have, is the difference between accomplishing what you wanted to and not even coming close. It just kills me. I know absolutely nothing about it, and I've never been in that position. Trust me. I mean, I pretty much checked out after the the Canada Fitness Awards in 1976.
Hey, I still couldn't do the flex arm hang.
I was doing the flexed arm hang and checking out after about 5 seconds, but there's always a kid who can hang there indefinitely.
Absolutely.
And they're talking award of excellence if you can do that. There's always one or two.
Is generally not a good athlete, just 90 pounds and can lock those arms. And
it's just, you're all good to go.
And that kid is the new hero for a day. I'm like, did you see that kid's arm hang? My God, I want to be him or her. Oh, God. Where are you going now?
I ramped up the noise again with Sonic Youth's Cool Thing. When Rach gave me even the slightest green light to go in a noisy direction, there's plenty that's far noisier than Sonic Youth, and certainly unlistenable. But there's a great riff in Cool Thing that loops, and Thurston Moore and Kim Gordon created this amazing giant tapestry of wicked cool noise that very few people that I know ever got into, and to hear that Rach enjoyed a little bit of that noise, I couldn't help but throw in a reference to the no wave movement out of New York City that they represent, and it's here's hoping that she'll dig that one, that they will dig that one too.
Right on. And once again, I broke the rules because I don't know if this is really lo-fi. It's definitely not 80s, 90s, but I've liked this band for a long time. Cold War Kids, and Hang Me Out to Dry. And I think when I listen to this song and listen to these lyrics, it's about getting worked. And the song might be about addiction. It also might be about getting dumped over and over again, or just getting treated poorly and then coming back for another run at it. And it's just, you work me and hang me out to dry, or you hang me up to dry. And, but yet I'm coming back for another run at it. And this speaks to the process of high level training where, you better love the process because, you don't win a lot. It's not like in hockey, you win, even if you're a bad team, you win 30% of the games. Like 3 times out of 10, at least you get to go home with a smile on your face. In the world of high level Ironman and triathlon and half Ironmans, you better love the process. You better love the thrill of competition, because it's very slim chances you're going to be on that podium anyway. So it's that willingness to just get worked and dry yourself out and come at it and fight another day. And I don't know. It's like I said, I think I can identify with Rach and their training and their compete, because I felt it. And you better not be in love with winning, because you better love the sport.
I appreciate that you have the capacity to make those linkages, because if there's no songs about English muffins and marmalade, then I don't think I have a point of reference the way that you can connect that you can connect high level competition. I have no I have nothing.
You're in charge of
what's my highest level of competition? Shitty beer league hockey.
You're in charge of snacks, and there's a rule there.
Yeah, I'm in charge of making sure that the defibrillator is nice and close. I love how you're making some terrific connections lyrically and musically to that competitive spirit, and I'm thankful to you because I have no capacity to do that. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here with me.
That's because I'm out of my league in this list. I have to have something I can cotton on to.
When Rach was describing the musical keys that informed their life, I tried to connect it. I tried to connect a poet to some of what I attempted to put together, and one that I always go back to, a poet that I always go back to, who's also a fantastic musician and someone in my world in London in the late 80s was Linton Kwesi Johnson. Wrote a poem in 1974 called 5 Nights of Bleeding, which was largely about violence, race riots, and racism in London. And 5 Nights of Bleeding was a poem that was later converted to a cool song, and it has its roots obviously in the Jamaican sound, but it moves forward and informs a lot of the British music in the ska realm, I guess, later. But I think I'm not sure if you had a chance to listen to it.
Yeah, I did.
But it's powerful. And when you have Joe Jackson and Joe Strummer, referencing Linton Kwesi Johnson, there's no question that there's a level of importance there, lyrically and critically, that I wanted to move the narrative a little bit more with, just to set up the next few songs that come along, and I would be remiss if I didn't. I've wanted to put this into a list, into a Roark mix, but I haven't had the opportunity, and I might not get the chance again. So there you go, Rach. You're getting 5 Nights of Bleeding. What was your next beauty?
Well, this song, Mountain Goats, Rain in Soho, and this has many connections because Rach mentioned when they swim the swim portion of Ironman, they have Mozart's Requiem going through their head. That pacing, that metronome per se. This song, when I first heard it, I was listening to a lot of their music and going through it. This song actually has a steady beat through it the entire thing. It doesn't deviate at all, which I thought, God, that is a pace song if there ever was one. And then I also I thought of your conversation with Rach, talking about breakdowns, and your breakdown was Saskatchewan?
North Battleford.
Yes.
It's a great place to be.
And
lose
Rach's breakdown on their 3-week tour with the band was in New York City. So Rain in Soho seemed to make sense to me. And I did laugh. I'm like, wow, Rach, that is probably the first or second stop on the tour. That's pretty early breakdown, I must say. I am shocked you didn't turn around.
Well, I think Rach is so smart. They knew that everyone was going to have a breakdown, and Rach just wanted to be first to the finish line.
I guess so. Let's test the waters.
Rach wanted a podium finish in the breakdown category of bands.
Show them how it's done,
Exactly.
But I do wonder in the middle of your breakdown, and Rach is wondering, is this worth it? Like, I mean, it is hard to turn around and thumb your way back to Toronto with a cello.
Yeah.
That's got to weigh into the decision of like, I got to stick with this because I got no ride back. I'm gonna have to leave this cello behind.
Absolutely.
So, Rach did the math in Soho.
But I can tell you for certain there are more transportation possibilities in the greater New York area than in North Battleford, Saskatchewan.
Who had it worse? And more opportunities to sell the cello.
I know you were in on a certain gray coach dialogue today that went off the rails, and I'm not going to get into that. But that was one of my possibilities, was a very long gray coach ride back to Ontario. Oh, I chose a different option, but anyway, it was
Did you have some new terms? Did you lay out the terms of this is what it's going to take to keep me in the band?
No, it was the best thing to do was to dissolve the situation and then just tolerate everybody for a little while longer. It's fine.
What do you got?
Moving on. I know that Rach loves ska, and I love the song "Too Much Pressure" by the Selector. Again, it's just we had separate, certainly separate ska experiences, but again, one of the net benefits of being in Toronto in the late 70s, early 80s, through the end of high school was access to these shows and the Selector, Madness, specials, the English Beat, they were through on a fairly regular basis. And what happened was that there was a, homegrown ska scene that was even happening in the high school scene. There was a great, local, ska cover band at a local high school named the band was called Go Feet, and with some great guys actually that I knew, and it was pure fun. It was joyous, fun, ruckus, youthful, important music in 1981 or 82, whatever year it was. And covering these joyous songs and getting everybody on board. It was a real movement, and it was a cool scene. And certainly the age would have been a little bit different. But when Rach was in Germany, there's no question. I could see exactly why Rach was drawn to the scene and drawn to the music itself. It was joyous. It's joyous, rhythmic wonderfulness, and it's happy music, and too much pressure is just reference that for me. And there's a couple more songs, of course, in my list that certainly are in the same pocket, but that one especially is one that is just a beauty. It's just a pure, joyful ska song.
I think I need to listen to more ska.
Oh, sure. I think it could work well into your. I think it could work well into all kinds of your portions of your life. I'm not sure how much ska lends itself to ambient listening while you're enjoying a good meal. I would say it's
different program.
It might not be it, but around the house, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, no, that would be it would definitely be that environment, and
that's how I get my steps in every day.
I really nailed it with lo-fi when it comes to the Frogs and their cover of "I Need to Know." It is an acoustic guitar. I don't know if it's loosely strung, but they are singing. This gives me inspiration for karaoke, because it's like they're singing with their mouths kind of half wired shut. I listen to this and I start laughing. I'm like, oh my God, this is minimal effort and it sounds pretty damn good, So I don't know if this is disrespectful towards the song, but I don't know if they tried really hard, but it sounds amazing.
How could it possibly be disrespectful? I think you're bang on. I think that's a killer choice.
Because I love the song, and it most certainly is lo-fi. There's zero production going on there.
You do more homework than I do. I generally have a gut feeling as we speak to a guest in my head, and I'm not clever enough to make mental notes that are accurate, but I generally put these things together, I really, I like, you go deep. You definitely, I'm just floating my bloated carcass on the surface of this world, and you're doing a nice deep dive. I'm in awe. That was a good call. Very good.
I have to mask my lack of knowledge, my friend. So that's how it works.
I'm really drawn. I've always been to powerful women in music. I've always thought that they are just so fucking cool. Chrissie Hynde Pretenders, obviously, was probably the first time where, because through the punk movement, I mean, women really started to get a foothold and stake their claim and have important things to say and have kick-ass bands. And as it moved forward through the 70s, the Pathfinders, the women who paved the way for other cool bands, and I threw in a song by a band called the Muffs, called Lucky Guy, which is just another beautiful racket. Kim Shattuck, who sadly passed away not too long ago, fronted a band called the Muffs, who played through the Toronto scene. And I was thinking that in the era that Rach was in Toronto and going to places like Lee's Palace, I think this could well have been a band that she caught. It was right in the wheelhouse of the time that they were in Toronto, and I think that it would be a band that Rach would have been drawn to. Kim went on to head the Pandoras and the Coolies, and again, I'm not sure if you spun that tune a lot, but talk about a joyous, just a great, powerful song. And Kim has this growl to her, and I could, being drawn to powerful women performers, and the voice that they have, it was a time and place that I thought, hey, you know what? Muffs played Lee's Palace and a bunch of other Toronto places, but in my head, I think Rach was probably there. So
it would
that's
be kind of cool. It would be kind of cool to think that you two very well may have crossed paths.
Well, I think the timing was right. Certainly, I had arrived back in Toronto, and I was trying to figure stuff out. And certainly in the wheelhouse or the years that Rach gave us that she was here, I'm sure in that specific area, I was into 2, at a minimum 3 to 4 shows a week, easily in that era. So you never know.
Yeah,
you never
very
know.
good chance.
Yeah, the world's a funny place.
I don't know how I landed upon this band, but it's one of those things where you bounce and bounce and bounce, and sometimes in the world of Spotify, it suggests a band, and half Japanese. I don't know if you know this band.
I do not.
I'm not exactly even sure where this band is from, but I do love certain things about this band. Self-described, they have stated that all their songs are either love songs or monster songs, which is fantastic. We have 2 directions to go here. And Jad,
I already love them.
Jad is you'll love this, is the leader of the band and the lead guitarist, and he self-admitted that he has never tuned a guitar. He always plays an out-of-tune guitar, and he also says that I do believe that there are chords for guitars. They are necessary to plug an electric guitar into, and that's about what he thinks of chord progressions. So, and this song puts some sugar on it. Well, it's 100% about sex. So I do love the fact that a lot of these songs that I've dug up, there's not a lot of hidden meanings. Like, this is what you're having, and a lot of them have that repetitive nature. It's not like they're making you search for meaning. It's like, this is where we're at, and I'm going to say it about 40 times. It's that repetitive, and I quite like it. Like I said, it's not something that I naturally go to, and it's here's what I love is that Spotify gives you your daily mix or your weekly mix based on all the things you've listened to. Mine's a shit show now because we have all these guests on there. I've got punk and ska and Mariah, and the whole gamut. So
it probably started out. It started out just fine.
Yes, we had three guests right in our wheelhouse.
and I'm sure that Spotify's ventured into the ditch a few times for you in the last 2 weeks, which is fantastic.
So I love it because I look forward to my daily mix. I'm like, who do you think I am today? This is fascinating. So there we go. Half Japanese. I'll listen to it tomorrow morning on my daily mix.
While we're on the topic of detuned guitars, I went down a very dark place and pulled up "Creep in the Cellar" by Butthole Surfers. I mean, I've seen this band twice, at least, and and you have to be in a certain headspace to get into experimental rock to begin with. You have to be in an extra special space to understand the mind or attempt to understand the mind of Gibby Haynes. I mean, this is just a far out, freaky. It's just it's a wild ride, but you have to go in knowing it's going to be a wild ride. I think if you go in with any expectation of calm entertainment, and I'm going to give you an example. The first time I saw Butthole Surfers, unless I'm mistaken, the backdrop onto the backdrop was a projection of a sex change operation.
Okay. What
a medical. It was a medical film of the show was at RPM, probably in '86 or '87.
So I may have seen you there.
I have to consult the giant bucket of gig stubs, but that album, Rembrandt Pussy Horse, is a terrific reference to experimental noise rock, and it's a bit of a cacophony, but it's a great. I don't want to say it's joyous. I don't find it joyous at all. It is so challenging to put that record on and listen to it. But when Rach mentioned an affinity to the noise genre, I couldn't help but throw that one into the mix. It's it's a wild ride. I mean, Creep in the Cellar is pretty much everything the title suggests it is.
I know. I was playing it in the car today, and the windows went up.
Yeah.
Oh God. Rach talked about their love of Bikini Girl, and tempted to put on a Bikini Girl song, but I put on Beat Happening. This band, the song Cry for a Shadow, I like the song, I like the message, but I also like the fact that this band's from Olympia, so predated Bikini Kill, obviously, and was a big influence for Bikini Kill. They were inspired by Beat Happening, so they were the predecessors. So I like that fact, and I also like the fact that they started K Records. The lead of this band started that record company, signed a lot of labels like Bikini Kill and other ones, and they were true ethos to a punk band in that they were pissed if they couldn't borrow other bands' equipment before they went on. They didn't bring much to the show, and they would play. The drums would be yogurt containers sometimes. They are about as lo-fi as it gets, but they became quite a good band. And Kurt Cobain actually says that when he wants to remember the fun of making music, the child in us, he likes listening to K record groups. So this band was a major influence. So I think that Rach would like this because of the fact that this band, I did it. Bikini Kill was the obvious choice, but I went with Beat Happening. So there you go.
Fantastic. I brought it down a little bit with my next pick. It's a personal favorite, and it does mean a lot to me and this family because my children know that this is going to be my funeral song. And it's Pressure Drop by Toots and the Maytals, which informs both reggae and ska traditions. But it is just it's I could see Rach enjoying this one. I could see that it's got such a classic. It's got a good happening, joyous vibe to it. I don't know if it's necessarily an intense training song. I think this is probably, with Rach, you and I broached what's the intensity the training music? What's the intensity of the relaxing or the after training? And to that end, I felt that this is a perfect after workout song. It could moderate your heart rate or and Pressure Drop to me is it's just fantastic. I mean, became popular. It's featured in the film The Harder They Come, and of course Toots again. Sadly, my list has a lot of people who have passed away recently, but Toots left us not too long ago.
Yep.
My dear high school friend, Robert Hislop from Jamaica, was Toots' next door neighbor for a short period of time. And I just kicking myself because I never went to go visit Robert, and because that would have been pretty fun to just go and hang out with Toots. But I didn't, and that's how life works out sometimes. But I had to throw in Pressure Drop. I envisioned Rach just in a state of exhaustion, throwing this on just to bring it on back,
Yeah. And not go super mellow, like
no,
you still got to move,
it's got
you still got to be active recovery. Yeah. You made a salient point there in terms of, regret of not visiting people. I think COVID's taught us that, hey, in terms of
sure,
we put off shows, we put off things to do. I don't think Rach is in that category because of the fact that they have a goal and they go for it. So there's no putting anything off. But last night, I went to the Van Gogh exhibit.
Oh yeah,
and it was at 8:00 start, and I had a busy 3 or 4 days preceding that, and an emotional one on Sunday, and it was 7:00 in the evening. I'm like, I got to go down to the convention center and see the show. I'm like, and then I thought, I'm like, oh my God, this is the first show you've seen in a year and you're thinking of blowing it off, you moron. You can't do that. These are the new rules, man. You have to go to a show. You have to do these things. You have to go see people. And there was a split second where I got into my old self of maybe bailing on something. I'm like, no. We will not go into that mode ever again. Maybe we will, I should say ever again, but, as there's going to be an onslaught of shows and an onslaught of people just doing this, that, and going for it once we can. But Rach will never be in that or presently is not in that category of putting shit off. It's full on.
I'm of two minds with that, and you raise a great point. I just think that so many relationships, social and otherwise, exist on tenterhooks at the best of times, and for people, for example, in the city of Toronto, who have been forced to go 14, 15 months without seeing people live. I get a sense that people are going to have to relearn how to do that. I don't think in my head, I just don't think that everybody is just going to be able to snap back to the way it was in January 14 months ago. I think that people are going to have to relearn the social aspects of enjoying music. I think everything's going to be weird and different. I don't think it's ever going to go back to unfortunately the way it was, because I think there's always going to be an element of fear in the social situation. And I worry about a lot of people's, I don't necessarily worry about myself at 57, but I worry about how young people are going to relearn their social scene. And I think that music is going to be a big part of the healing process. Not to go too deep onto that, but it's going to be a wild ride. I mean, you're seeing the light, you're seeing some things happening, and we're still fully, we're not. We're told we're fully locked down, but I think this holiday weekend you're going to see a lot of dissension in the ranks. It's going to be it's going to be 27 degrees here. There's going to be a whole lot of fuck this, I'm going out.
Yeah.
And with a vast number of people, or certainly in certain age groups, having at least one vaccine, that's going to prompt them to move forward. It's going to be Gonna be a busy weekend, that's for sure.
Well, we're at my last one, my friend, and it's Pavement, another band I don't know too much about, but I picked Range, and I could talk about the song. But what I love about this band is that they toured with the Smashing Pumpkins for a little while and just hated them, absolutely hated them so much that for the last verse of this song, they went on about how much they hated the Smashing Pumpkins. And then I don't know, the lead singer in press afterwards, he said, "I can't believe that people just want to talk about how much I hate the Smashing Pumpkins and not about the rest of the song." I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, but is that shocking? Like, the song's okay, but you did say they're a bunch of pricks.
The touring bands together, I think there's a level of honesty there that just wasn't or has not been often achieved, in terms of how a road relationship goes. Hats off to honesty.
Absolutely. I think they're rather well loved because I believe that there are many people who went, I can believe it.
I was in on it.
In the same verse, he actually says, and the Stone Temple Pilots, we quite like them. He just started talking, really, and the song
for
ends.
Sure.
All right, I'm done. What do you got?
I tied a bow on this one with a song, a great tune called "Institutionalized" by Suicidal Tendencies. Great hardcore thrash punk band out of Venice, California, and Institutionalized pretty much has to be heard to be experienced. It defies description, so I'm not going to even get into it. But it is a wonderful dialogue on parent-kid relationships, about suspicion, and about well, I mean, this song, I've been referencing this with a couple of friends, this song, and quoting it for easily 40 years, 35 years, certainly since it came out. But super important, absolutely influential band. Original bass player, Rob Trujillo's, moved on to play bass with Metallica now. So it's interesting, the way that worked out. Institutionalized, unless I'm mistaken, was in the film Repo Man. I don't know, is Repo Man a film of yours?
Yeah, for sure. But I can't picture the song. But now I'm going to have to rewatch it.
Emilio Estevez, and I'm sure that Institutionalized was certainly in the soundtrack anyway, and appeared in the movie. But the dialogue and the kid whose name is Mike, it's just the banter, the back and forth between the parents and the kids, what the expectations of the parents are of the kid, and what the kid's assessment of the environment that he has to grow up into. Just, I love every second of it. I mean, it's a grinder, and it's a noisy racket. And I'm not suggesting for 1 second that this was Rach's experience. I'm just thinking that Rach could appreciate this. and that's why I threw it in.
Do you ever think that if anyone watches the show, and perhaps even one of our guests actually watches the second half of the show, Rach is thinking, where the fuck is he going with this?
I know. What are you doing? Yeah, I'm all over the map on these things, but this is great fun for me.
It's great fun for me. Like I said, I try to pretend that I can get inside Rach's head, and Rach is just thinking, wow, did you not listen to anything I said?
I expect that. If I get to meet Rach in person someday, which I hope to, I'm hoping that the first thing, I'm hoping the first thing I don't hear is, What the fuck was that?
You know, you go and support them at a race, and just after the finish, when Rach is just in a fog, she sees you and gets this second wave, 10th wave of energy. It's like, hey, I want to talk to you.
I can only imagine me at an Ironman competition standing on the side of a road in a white Speedo and red cowboy boots in my bloated and bewildered state. I would have the largest BMI of anybody involved in the whole process. It's not something that I would just actively pursue. I don't wallow in worry about things like that, but there's a reason there's a reason that there's probably a very good reason why I don't expose myself to a lot of high performance athletes.
We will see Rach at a club a day afterwards. Okay. That is the place.
I have no doubt. I have a feeling that we would see Rach at a club 15 minutes after she finishes. I think that Rach is the type of amazing human being who has gears that none of us can even imagine having.
Well, I'm always amazed that I've attended many an Ironman, mostly as a spectator, and those athletes that get done in 9-10 hours, God, sub 9 hours. You see them afterwards, like a couple hours afterwards. I'm like, really? You're walking, like they just come across the finish line, just dying.
I can't
and then,
imagine.
Get their IV and then get a quick shower and then, okay, let's go for a walk. It's unbelievable.
The closest thing I can think of in my own personal experience to doing an Ironman is probably just the shitting myself. I can accomplish that. But I think I can accomplish that without. I can accomplish that in 15 minutes. I don't need 8 hours of torture to accomplish that.
There's a reason why a lot of Ironman triathletes do not wear a white suit.
Yes. I did a little bit of research on my own, and I'm horrified. I'm both impressed and horrified.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we went long with this one. Holy God. I spoke a lot about stuff I do not know, but I appreciate sharing your knowledge because geez Louise, I'm going to take some serious notes and put these up with some of your music selections. These are amazing.
You came up with some beauties that I need to go and listen to. So I've got I got some music listening time set up for me for tomorrow. It's 12:10 in the morning, Toronto time. So it's just about time for me. But thanks again. This is a great night. I appreciate it.
All right. See you soon, Fred. Well, there you have it. That's a wrap on episode 5, and that was a good one. That was it was a great conversation with Rach. I know Chris and I loved it. We talked a lot after the episode and just how much that they had to offer and great stories. And putting the mixtape together was a lot of fun. And as you can see, Chris had fun with it because he loves this kind of music, and so it was good to see him flourish. So there you go. We got another couple of good ones lined up in the next couple of weeks, and yeah, so look forward to seeing you a week or so down the road, and yeah, get out there and support your local record store and go see a band as soon as you can. So we'll see you next week. Thanks.